Hi everyone, welcome to Be My Guest with Birce Didar, a cozy corner where heartfelt conversations bloom and stories intertwine. I'm beyond excited to embark on this journey with you, diving into the realms of personal growth, career paths, diversity and inclusion, leadership musings, women's empowerment, and sustainability. In each episode, we will sit down with extraordinarily individuals, sharing their journeys, insights, and dreams. Together, we will weave a tapestry of inspiration, learning, and community building. Come along as we explore the rich tapestry of life's experiences, celebrating resilience, creativity, and the beauty of diverse voices. Let's journey together, one heartfelt chat at a time. Today, I have Rafa with me in the room. Hi, Rafa.
Hi Birce, how are you?
Good. It's another not sunny day in Copenhagen, so I'm trying my best to keep my energy up. But yeah, let me know who you are. Introduce yourself. I mean, I know you, but for the audience, who is Rafa?
Sure, and first I must apologize because I'm coming out from a cold, as you can hear from my voice, but hopefully I don't lose it throughout the conversation. But great to be here and great. Thanks so much for the invitation. My name is Rafael. I'm in my 50s already, and I'm born and raised in Mexico. I was born in a state and city called Oaxaca, which is southeast Mexico. But most of my life I lived in the center of the country, which is a city called San Luis. That's where I went to medical school. I'm a physician by training. Then I moved to the US many years ago after I finished my medical school, and I did some post-grad training. I lived in Boston. I lived in Miami. I lived in New York for a few years. And then I came back to Mexico City, and I spent there roughly 20 years working for pharma and working in my private practice at the clinic. I'm married. I have two kids. They are teenagers now, a boy and a girl. And for the last 4 years, I'm living in Denmark. So we relocated to Denmark, and we've had a fantastic experience so far. Family is enjoying it. Kids are spending some of their teenage years over here, and it's a fantastic place to be. I know the weather can be trying and challenging, but it's such a fantastic city and it's so peaceful, and we are really enjoying it.
Yeah. I'm also like coming from a sunny environment. So first of all, like you mentioned you've traveled to the US, lived there, and now you're in Denmark. Have you had any issues, like anything that troubled you at the beginning? How did you deal with that?
Yeah, you know what? I guess attitude has to do a lot.
Yeah.
We actually relocated in the middle of COVID, so
Oh,
that was not necessarily that easy because most of my interactions with, at work in the company I was joining, I used to work for the same company in Mexico, the same company I'm working for now in Denmark. So that made it a little bit difficult, and of course, tons of places were closed and all these restrictions, which were not fortunately that severe in Denmark. That made it a little difficult, but I think we had a very positive attitude in general as a family, because we had this curiosity about living abroad with the kids for the first time. And as soon as we saw the family was settling in, onboarding well, starting to have their little friends and let's say a social network to connect with, then things started to really happen and settle. And weather was really secondary, I would say.
And what are you busy nowadays? What do you do?
Well, I'm my current responsibility. I'm heading a team of in a function in pharma, what we call medical affairs, which is we're mostly a bunch of physicians, some non-physicians with a scientific background. We pretty much have the mandate to bring the perspective, which is a very nice mandate to have, in my opinion, which is the fact that I've been in medical affairs for close to 20 years now, where we bring the perspectives of patients and physicians and the medical community when it comes to unmet needs in a specific disease. We deal a lot with chronic conditions. So that's a very rewarding mandate to have. And of course, we take it very seriously because the better, let's say, a pharma company that is designing and developing innovation understands that, the better chances that whatever it is we produce as innovation will actually help people out there with these conditions. And of course, we want to make it as easy for physicians to actually understand that innovation and make sure they use it in the right way, in the right patient. So nowadays, as our specific area is growing a lot, there's tons of attention. I work in the area of obesity specifically. So as you may have seen in the media, there's tons of attention nowadays. There's new treatments coming in that are, for the first time, combine good efficacy, they are safe, and they have a long track record. So they are really changing the narrative of obesity being perceived as a chronic disease. That's actually very good for patients. And of course, as we have become busier in the team, we're growing. And let's say from a leadership perspective, that comes obviously with some challenges and some good opportunities, because we have tons of development opportunities for people within the team. And at the same time makes it a little bit challenging because we are expanding and growing as we go. And so we are not necessarily in steady state, but it's exciting, an exciting time to be in this area, because we're really transforming what obesity is all about and the understanding of obesity for so many people with this condition out there in the world.
Yeah, and I bet people can hear your passion. And I know from your background, like you being an MD and also you practiced, you were a clinician before. So how does that help you with what you're doing now?
That's a very good question, Birce, because it brings me back to close to 20 years ago when I first moved from academia and being a clinician to pharma. It was fairly random, I must say. Somebody invited me. Would you consider to work in pharma? At some point I said, yes, why not? I'm curious by nature, so I guess that helped. And one of the reasons I became a physician is because I wanted to help people, sort of is in my nature. And I saw a really good opportunity to continue doing the same by working in pharma, by bringing all these solutions and innovation to more people. So I really considered that the impact I could have beyond my individual patients at my clinic, we could actually reach many more people by, let's say, educating physicians, make sure they understand the innovation, they deliver the standard of care in managing obesity that at the end of the day will benefit patients. So I didn't necessarily see major differences between what I was happy doing as a clinician. And of course, there's an element of science. There's an element of, biology and a lot of things that I'm curious and passionate about that just came together. And on top of that, caring for patients through being a clinician, caring for patients through my role in the pharma industry. But I also did see a connection with caring for people that work in the company and in a leadership role. That has been very rewarding. See people grow, attract new talent. I truly believe that if you care for your people, you provide also a nice environment, a nice culture. It's also caring. They'll thrive. And you should consider yourself really lucky to provide such a culture, such environment that people want to work in the team, have fun, and at the end of the day, be aligned in delivering this mission of improving health and benefiting people with diseases out there, right? So I found connections. I don't consider that I was doing something significantly different as a clinician. Versus the pharma role, versus the leadership role. I think they all come nicely together, in my opinion.
You made a really nice connection because you combined like what's in your nature, which is a very curious person. So apparently, you have this job satisfaction because you're working with science and you create this narrative for science, but you do it with your caring personality. And you also linked it with your leadership style as well, like you being a really caring person, helps you to be a natural leader in a very caring way. What about the leadership itself? Like, did you already know, like in the past, that you wanted to become a leader, or has it been happened like organically? How? Tell me a little about your leadership journey.
Yeah, it's probably a little bit atypical because I probably had some sort of indirect leadership as, let's say, from being a student. I had some, I don't want to, I don't know if I could say leadership roles, but I was part of the university council as a student representative. So I had some of those, exposures where you were representing and you were in a way leading indirectly and providing influence. I always considered myself, or at least I've been told throughout the years as a student and when I was doing my postgrad training, that I was in sort of like an informal leader within the teams with my peers, and they sort of if there was a tough discussion to be had with somebody, I mean, they usually came to me and said, could you have this discussion on behalf of the team or your peers, that sort of thing. But interestingly enough, when I joined pharma, my first responsibility back in Mexico City was a leadership position. So wow. It just happened that there was an opportunity there. Somebody thought that I could do a good job. And I had, of course, zero experience in pharma and zero experience in formal leadership, leading a team per se, let's say, in the corporate world. So, and that, of course, was a very humbling experience because somebody saw something. I obviously, going back, I said, why did they choose me back then? I have no idea, because it was like too many new things at the same time, but slowly but surely through patience. And I can definitely speak highly of my company, which is the current company I work in, that they did invest in me a lot. Meaning training, leadership training, and feedback and mentoring and coaching. And and of course, I made tons of mistakes in the beginning. Maybe not that many, but I definitely did some. And but over time, I came to become comfortable with the role of being a leader. I understood it better. As an example, I used to have like a very high bar in terms of being a perfectionist, right? As let's say an individual contributor. And then when I started hiring and expanding a new team in back then, like this is 2005, so it's a long time ago, Birce. I sort of tried to instill that very high bar of perfectionist, but I just came to realize people have different ways of delivering, still a high bar, but do it in their own way. So I said, like, oh, maybe my way is not the only way. Let's say at sometimes if I hire somebody and wasn't performing well, I used to get upset. Like, why is this person not delivering well? Maybe it's not passionate enough or professional enough. And then I said, they're doing the best they can. I mean, it's just their profile. Yeah. It's not necessarily fitting what's needed from this role. And maybe there's another role where they can actually really do well. So I think an evolution within my leadership understanding was just to be aware that, wait a second, I mean, there's a lot of matchmaking we need to do right, but most of the times you cannot blame people for not performing, specifically if you chose them, right? And then it's your responsibility. So as a leader, I think you need to evolve and remember that you should always have accountability from your decisions. There's tons of impact that comes from those decisions, and that people are doing the best they can in most situations. And it's just about making sure you facilitate that and try to see a fit between what they bring to the table with their unique set of skills, personality, motivators, interests. And if you are able to match that with something that a role or the company is needing, then you'll be in a very good place. I used to say a lot, or I say a lot, that usually 90% of success as a leader is selecting the right people for the right position based on their skill set. That's 90% of the success. You could be a terrible leader, but if you do that right, I mean, things will happen. And of course, if you provide that environment we talked about, and you inspire, you try to motivate, and you try to be there for them as the so-called servant type of leader, things
So
usually
Rafa,
happen, and people are.
you talked about like how you approach to leadership and how you value different styles and perspectives, and it's really, you know, fantastic that you see individuals as pure talents rather than trying to fit them into something that they're not. Maybe sometimes, you know, there is not a good fit and you're not pushing the person to fit in that mold. Maybe they can do something better with their skill of set or their attributes. What if people are not so lucky to have a manager like you? So what if they don't have this opportunity with their leader, where, you know, they're in this difficult situation where they believe they have the skill set, but maybe they can't show it. They can't show their value. So how would you approach that?
It's a tough question, but I would say that in any particular role in let's say the corporate world, um, you need to be aware or pay attention to how that role feels for you. And I know this may sound super subjective, but there's a feeling where you say, I like what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you probably have, for people out there that have worked in different roles or companies and different functions, you sometimes have this feeling that I'm really enjoying this. This doesn't feel like a job,
Yeah.
I'm having fun. That's, I mean, and of course, oftentimes you feel engaged. You get acknowledged by peers. Your deliverables are good. So there's usually a virtuous cycle of things that happen when somebody is in the right job where they can showcase and use to the max their strengths and their abilities. Then, of course, so if that is a good feeling, if that is working well, I know recognition is such an important part
yes.
of being happy in a company. Uh, but at the same time, I guess over time, sometimes it's like this feels so good that regardless of the recognition, I'm just enjoying it, and this is really a nice gift. In the ideal scenario, if you are doing this, and of course you're lucky to have people around you. Sometimes it's not necessarily the boss, right? But other people around them, including your boss, or that really tell you did a good job, you're doing a good job, you're adding value. That counts a lot, I would say. Sometimes we forget, and there's a famous quoting by Peter Drucker, this management guru from many years ago, we said like you need to tell your boss and your upper management and show them and tell them the good job that you're doing, because otherwise they may not know. So I think, and I know there could be a humble approach. My work, my results, my deliverables will speak for themselves. Sometimes we sort of think that will do the trick, but there's nothing wrong with communicating with the good things we're doing. Sometimes we also need to take some accountability and drive a little bit of showcasing what we're doing, and of course with certain balance, because you don't want to tell everybody, oh, I did this today, which is fantastic, because you may exhaust that resource. But I think there's always an opportunity for anybody within a certain company to show and demonstrate and communicate the good work that they're doing, because sometimes you can get very busy. Managers cannot be everywhere, and leaders that you really also need to spend some time and some reflection in sharing what are you doing, what are the projects you're involved, how much value you're bringing to the table.
It's also cultural, isn't it? A little bit. Like it has to do a little about your upbringing as well. Like, have you grown up in a culture where it is okay to show what you're doing? Is it okay to quote unquote brag? Or like you grew up in a culture that's very like individualistic, and then you just thrive when you're on stage, you share, you show. I guess like coming from Turkey, I can share that, you know, some of us, we like to show and be proud of what we did. But for me personally, I take those like celebration times not quite good, maybe as I could. What I mean is like I don't like to spend so much celebrating my successes. I shy away from that. I'm also not good at taking compliments as well. Like I'm like, oh, okay, just thank you, okay, and that's really confusing. So maybe it's also uh, being more conscious about your personal branding and how you are perceived by others, right?
100%, Birce. I think it's very individual. I have people that I've made the mistake to let's recognize them and give them all the spotlight, and they sort of felt, oh, I did that I didn't like because they felt too exposed. They are not the bragging type, and they are more potentially introverted. So you always need to take that into consideration. But you are absolutely right. But I believe even regardless of whether or not you come from a culture or it's natural in you to communicate and share some of the good work you're doing, you gotta do it at some level. And in the case of leaders, by the way, tons of sharing the successes are not your successes, are the team successes. That I'm a big believer in that. That if something happened, well, it's just because the team did a good job, and you are just there a little bit as the messenger. And of course, you feel proud because you've been also adding something, some ingredients, some guidance, some support, whatever it is that you're doing from a leadership position that contributed to that success. But at the end of the day, it's like the team that did it. And so as a leader, of course, you regardless of your personal style, you gotta look for those options or those opportunities for visibility, for recognition, and for the team for sure. I see it as part of my role, because otherwise you may know it, but not necessarily other people in the organization. And as I said, you need to be also selective. You cannot, I mean, I've known people over the years that could be too bragging and brag about every single thing they're doing every single day. And that, of course, is overwhelming and it's not necessarily. Then you dilute the impact of that sharing. But if you do it strategically and you do it based on the individual styles and remain true to that, you should be fine. There's
nice balance.
There's a nice balance that you could actually get there. Yeah.
And talking about these like different personal styles you just mentioned, have you done this 4-color tests?
I have, yes.
And can you let people know more about the test for the ones that don't know what is that about?
Yeah, I always get confused because I've done a few tests where they are different tests that they use exactly the same colors, and then it becomes confusing. For example, there's one famous one which is called the insights profile. I think we use that a lot in the company. And then you have yellow, red, green, blue, and they sort of profile you in a way whether or not you're more innovative and and you think about the future and try to innovate and look for different ways of doing things. That's a little bit more the yellow color. Then you have red, which is more decisive, to the point. Then you have the analytical profiles, and you have sometimes the more process orientated. And so those profilings work in a way, helps you know you better. I'm myself on this specific insights profile. It has never been a surprise for people that know me or work with me that I'm more on the yellow type. That's what dominates my insights profile, because I like to think about the future and ideate and create. That's sort of in my nature, I guess. Yeah.
And I mean, for the people that don't know you and don't have the opportunity to see you in the office, I mean, I can vouch for you. Like when I see you in the office, you're always in your zone, in your element as well. And there's something great about seeing people in their element, doing the thing like they like doing, right? So it's a really heartwarming imagery when you see it, because when I see it in the office and when I see you interact with people, I can see that you truly enjoy that. And I think it's also about the thing that we talked before, like I don't think there is a right personality or like a wrong personality or with the working styles. It's just different for everyone. And people can thrive doing different things and they can add value differently, like you mentioned, right? So different people adding different set of values, but still there's no right or wrong with any of those.
Fully agree. Every leader has their own styles, or any individual contributor has also a certain style, and as long they deliver effectively, to me, for example, there's several definitions of leadership and management, but there's one that I like quite a bit that summarizes everything. If as a leader you're able to deliver joint value through a team, that's sort of the what. Okay, the team is delivering performance, but jointly. And then the how is the team happy and engaged? That's pretty much what can define leadership in my mind, because if you don't have one of those two elements, let's say you're delivering, the deliverables are happening, but the team is completely unhappy, disengaged, and not in a good place, that's a fundamental of leadership in my mind, is that you actually try to create that culture. Of course, it could be situational because you could be going with a team through a difficult time, but that sort of summarizes. But going back to your point, Birce, there's tons of individuality. The typical tough challenge is when you are identifying new leaders, and you have, let's say, the introvert and the extrovert. I'm more of an extrovert myself. I could say that, but you have such fantastic examples of introvert leaders. And how do you actually look past that when you're assessing somebody? Because maybe they don't come across as bubbly, right? But they are oftentimes more empathetic. They listen more, they give their team and other people their place, they want to hear their opinions, they embrace diversity. So I do believe that's one of the major challenges we have nowadays, that we have also grown accustomed to what defines a leader, how a good leader looks like, and we always aim for the charismatic, right? Or the extrovert, the social person. But I mean, you could be all that and not be a good leader. Definitely. And in the contrary, introvert people, there's many studies suggesting that actually they can be actually as good leaders and probably even better leaders than some of the extrovert people out there, just because they have that listening and empathic component to them. But because obviously there's a different element, but individuality, I think, and diversity, and remaining true to your style, you could add value of tons of things. And that's one of the things that I've tried to do. I sort of have come to know myself. What can I add? And what can I bring to the table? And why I'm not, what are the things that I'm not good at? That of course, I'll focus on the things that I do well. And when I talk to people or teams or stakeholders, say, oh, you're doing a good job because ABC that you're bringing to the table. And of course, I keep doing more of that if that's working, right? I think there's it could be too difficult for a leader to perform well in every single, let's say, sub-competency of leadership. You need to say, okay, this is what I'm really good at, and continue working and striving to even do a better job over time, and try to manage the areas where you're not as proficient. And maybe obviously if you have a team, then, okay, this is probably why you have people that complement you with different profiles and styles.
And I guess being competent in every area, that's just unrealistic, and that's superhuman. It's not humanly possible to excel like at everything that you do. Of course, we will have like our strengths, but we will have our development areas, and that's perfectly fine. And those change over time, right? So Rafa, maybe it is very natural and easy for you to see or recognize a well-performing team, but like with harmony. You talked about that a little. And it comes with experience as well, right? Being a leader for so many years. But how would you define a a good team? Like what do you look for in a team? Like what gives you the impression that okay, now I got the team?
I the joint deliverable, to me it's an important element. Are they delivering on their mandate, right? Because it's all about, at the end of the day, performance in that way. That's how we're measured in companies in terms, is the team performing? And then how the team is performing is as important. And so a team that is performing well, they communicate a lot. You can see that they're having a good time. You can see that they respect each other. You can see that they, if there's somebody that is struggling, people will come to help them. They appear to be happy as a team. They enjoy being in that team. They are engaged in what they're doing, and that's you could definitely see it or feel it, because it sort of shows. You just need to sort of pay attention to it. Those are the components, because of course you could have a team that they enjoy their time together and they're having fun and they have a great affiliation among themselves, but not necessarily performing and delivering. Well, then that's there will be missing that part. Not necessarily easy now with the renewed attention, for good reasons, on diversity, right? Because it is a tough job to have different personalities, different styles, and still feeling embraced and being part of a team. Let's say 90% of a team is extroverts and you have 10% introverts. Maybe the introverts will have a tough time. But I've seen people and I've seen leaders that actually they do something, they instill something that the people that may actually be not as represented in a particular team, and diversity has so many dimensions, but they do something that includes those people. They're inclusive. They have a space for them. They even value that. They recognize at heart the fact that we're diverse is actually strength for the team. We'll have different perspectives. We'll have different backgrounds. We'll add our value contribution individually will be complemented, and our joint value contribution will be maximized, right? And it's just something that going back to the role modeling, if the leader actually appreciates that, verbalizes that appreciation, shows it in interactions with the team and other stakeholders, that the people say, oh, this is important. Yeah. And they sort of follow, and then that's what makes it very powerful. I don't think nobody has sort of cracked the code of all these elements of assessing a team that is performing and coming together and doing well. But there's at the end of the day, we're human, and also there's a connection element. There's an affiliation, an affinity. Oftentimes, if you think about the end result, also leaders that are able to remind the team at the end of the day, all this hard work, all this day-to-day, this is the mission we're here to accomplish, which is adding value for people out there that have diseases, like in the case of pharma and innovation. That's a powerful one. And it's going back a little bit to the area of obesity. There's like over 1 billion people in the world nowadays. Everybody knows somebody with this condition, with this disease. They know the struggles, they know the challenges. And if you think from what I'm doing in my day-to-day, that's adding value. That's powerful. That's how actually also that cements a team that they are actually going into a similar mission, a similar deliverable, and adding value that way from different perspectives. That's what makes the whole thing gel together.
And a follow-up question could be, apparently there are some people that shares the same level of enthusiasm and passion with you, and it's like a disease, it spreads, but in a positive way. But what do you do in a case where you don't see the same level of engagement or enthusiasm, maybe not only as a leader but also like among your peers? Like, how do you handle that?
I guess there's several approaches to that. I mean, as a physician, I always want to diagnose things before providing a suggestion or a treatment.
Occupational hazard.
So first, if there's, let's say, somebody that is not necessarily engaged, I would like to know first and foremost what's happening. Is it something we often forget? I mean, that we see our peers and our colleagues at the office, but we are humans. We have a life outside the office, and maybe there's something happening in their personal life, and we need to address with respect and without necessarily crossing boundaries. And of course, trust helps a lot, that you could have some of those conversations. Maybe there's something in their personal life that is happening that doesn't have them in a right place. Then, of course, there could be things in the job or in the company that are making them struggle. There could be that they are not in the right place for their sets of skills. When somebody tells me, I mean, when you have a low performer, what is the number one cause? To me, the most common cause I've seen throughout the years, and there's also, of course, some literature to support it, it's a mismatch between their profile, their motivators, their strengths, and what the role requires, number one. So when you acknowledge that, you say, this is not a bad person or a good person, if she's doing or he doing a good job or a bad job, it's just that it's not in the right place, right? So I would spend time ensuring, I mean, is this person in the right place for them? And of course, there could be issues with leadership. There could be other issues. There could be challenges on a particular project, right? Like that is like really tough. And then you need to provide support and guidance and that sort of thing. But I think with engagement, you need to go to what's driving that lack of engagement. There could be a variety of things.
And as we're getting closer, unfortunately, towards the end of the podcast, any tips for the people that would like to become a leader? Like, how should they approach it? What would be the considerations, and how should they maybe assess whether they're doing good or not, whether they're in the right way or not? Because also with leadership, I mean, some people would like to be individual contributors, and maybe for some people it's better. So not every position, I feel like, is for everyone. So, like, what do you think about that?
Yeah. I believe that I mean, we've been discussing how it's matchmaking, knowing yourself, what I am good at, what are my strengths, what I enjoy the most, what I enjoy the most about a certain activity or a certain role. If you are able to become aware of it, then it's fair to ask, am I pursuing a leadership position just because it's the expected next step, and to have let's say, a vertical growth in terms of scope and responsibilities? Or would that be a role that I truly think I could enjoy and be good at and use my strengths to the best? And that's a tough question. It's a very personal question. Of course, you could ask for feedback. You could ask for advice. You could try to ask yourself in let's say, in particular scenarios or at work, in situations where I'm collaborating with more colleagues and peers, do I usually, are there signs where I seem to be enjoying activities or responsibilities that are leadership-like? Or is more of my strength coming for things where I deliver myself as an individual contributor? I don't think it's an easy question. Sometimes it's, let's look for an opportunity and see if it's for you. There's nothing wrong. I mean, I've seen it where people sometimes say, I'm not sure if leadership is for me. But then they sometimes could try it even as a developmental assignment in a controlled environment. And then you see, I remember times where, let's say, one of my leaders moved from a role, and then you place somebody at intern. Okay, this person is interested, seemed to be potentially somebody that could be a good leader. And then they give it a try in a contained, controlled, and supported environment. And then you see,
You're like, bingo.
Bingo. And you say, yeah, how did that feel? Oh, fantastic. I think I'm a natural or whatever. It's not going to be a learning curve. And how is the team responding to them? Oh, the team seems to be super happy. We're very happy with this person as an interim role because the person supports us and guides us and is clear and is there for us, and it has our back. Then you say, oh, that's good. That's good indicators. Sometimes it's like, it's about acknowledging, I tried it. I know it's not for me. I've heard people saying, I tried it for 6 months. I tried it for a year, and I absolutely certain that's not for me. I enjoy more being an individual contributor, and it's perfectly fine. So I think it's also, it's all about awareness, and listening and feeling how you feel in this role, not necessarily just the title or the position, right?
And it definitely requires a lot of introspective thinking and a lot of self-work, which is for me the hardest work, being able to take a breath and then see and reflect on yourself. Well, thanks a lot for the conversation, Rafa. I truly enjoyed it. I will tag you in this, but people can reach you, I guess, if they would like to hear more or if they would like to follow you on your socials. Thanks a lot for your time. I hope you enjoyed it as well.
Very much, Birce. Thank you for the invitation, and I hope some of these reflections are useful for the people listening.
I bet. Thank you so much.
Welcome.